Hi, I'm J.W. Robitaille. I'm a Gainesville author best known for my Cory Marin female detective series. Cory, who is head of homicide at the Gainesville Police Department, is a strong woman with a diverse group of friends and a complicated love life. There are now 5 books in the series, and I am a work on my 6th. You can see above the law is due to be published next year. All the books are available on Amazon, both as ebooks and as paperbacks, and they're available to be read for free through Kindle Unlimited. They're also available at the Downtown Library, and autographed copies are available at Book Gallery West if you'd like to support a local business. All of the books are best read in order. They're standalone novels and they can be picked up at any point in the series. I like to write the kind of fiction that I like to read, which is character-based, thought-provoking, contemporary fiction. I liken my series to Louise Penny, Ian Rankin, Michael Connelly, and Sue Grafton. There's no graphic violence. They're much more of a thinking person's detective series. They develop a cast of characters that you get to know fairly well in a specific setting, which is Gainesville, and Gainesville becomes a character in and of itself. That's not to say that action isn't front and center, which it certainly is. Most of my readers say the books are page turners with surprises throughout the novel and twists that you would never expect. You can get an overview of my fiction if you visit my website, jwrobitaille.com. If you do, you will get a description of each of the novels, and you'll be able to read the first several chapters by clicking through to Amazon, where you can read the look inside features. You'll also see that I have written 3 literary novels and that I have a book of short stories that's available as a free download if you'd like to join my mailing list. I have also written 5 screenplays, which gave me lots of practice in focusing on action and on developing my dialogue. I love to hear from readers, so if you have any comments or questions about my fiction, please contact me at my email, jwrobitaille@gmail.com. I also love visiting book clubs, so if you're interested, please contact me about that. Now I'd like to read an excerpt from Chapter 2 of my first novel, Romancing the Crime. Chapter 1 introduces the characters, but in Chapter 2, she's showing up at the crime scene. Chapter 2. By the time Cory arrived on the scene in the parking lot beside the Elks Lodge, there were a half-dozen police cars clustered on the far side of the lot beside the woods, red and blue lights flashing. Yellow police tape stretched across the bridge leading into the woods. She stepped up to the patrolman guarding the bridge. "What have we got?" "White guy, dead when we got here." "Forensics?" "On their way." She nodded. "Who was the first on the scene?" The patrolman nodded across the bridge. "Bailey." When she crossed the bridge, she saw 2 uniforms standing a little way down the trail, blocking anyone who might come up the path, and 2 more standing a respectful distance to the side of the tarp-covered body. It was still daylight. How could a shooting happen in her own backyard in broad daylight? "Who's Bailey?" she asked. A large blond man who looked like a football player stepped forward. "Tell me what you got," she said curtly. He nodded deferentially. "White man," he said, his southern drawl making man sound like ma'am, the way it did when Mike said it. "Maybe late 30s, early 40s, felt for a pulse, and when there wasn't none, I left him the way I found him." "Good." No EMTs meant the scene might still be intact. EMTs were evidence mayhem technicians. No matter how hard the PT tried to educate them, they tore in like a herd of elephants, trampling everything in their wake. Their goal was to save lives. The rest was someone else's problem. Not 5 feet from the tarp, a 6-inch root snaked across the path. The leaf litter beside the root was swept clean. Signs of someone flailing or a struggle. She squatted beside the body and lifted the tarp. The youngish, sandy-haired man lay face down, his right arm extended above his head as if reaching for the root. She noticed the pale band around his wrist where a watch would have been. He was slight, clean-shaven. No exit wound meant the bullet was still inside. They would have to wait on autopsy results for the caliber. She turned to look up at Bailey, who towered over her like a blonde giant. "Anybody see anything?" "Yes, ma'am. Girl walking her dog." He nodded in the direction of a cluster of policemen. "Looks like an assault that went south when the victim chased the assailant." "Chased him?" she asked. Bailey shrugged. "Yes, ma'am, according to her." Thanks. She pulled the radio from her belt. I need a K9 unit down here. JJ, her favorite dog handler, came back. I jumped the call, on my way. As Cory approached, the blue uniforms parted around a girl with a patrolman's jacket over her shoulders. The jacket was more a comfort than warmth, because the temperature still hovered in the 80s. The girl's blonde hair fell forward over her face. When she looked up, her eyes were wide with shock and fear. I'm Detective Marin, and you are? Shelby Ferguson. Shelby, I'd like you to start from the beginning and tell me everything you saw. The girl nodded numbly. I was not walking my dog. What time would you say that was? She shrugged. A little after 5. I get up at 4:30. When I get home, I take him first thing. Cory glanced at her watch. The shooting took place a little more than half hour ago. Where's the dog now? My roommate came and got him. Where were you in relationship to the shooting? The girl lifted her chin across the creek and up the hill. Up there. Can you show me? The girl looked alarmed at the prospect of leaving the shelter of blue uniforms. We can take one of these guys if you'd like. The girl hesitated, then shook her head and started down the path with Cory close behind. She crossed the footbridge and stopped 15 feet up the far side of the ravine, then walked another 5 steps down the path and turned to look down toward the body. Here. Cory's heart sank. The tarp-covered body was hidden by trees. You can't see the body from here. When I saw them, they were standing over there. She pointed to the path. At first, it looked like they stopped to talk. I didn't think anything of it. I wouldn't have noticed, except Pumpkin had to poop. She nodded to dog poop a few feet off the trail. Thank God for dog poop. Cory saw Washington picking his way down the path, jotting something in his notebook. She hadn't called him out, but this was his neighborhood too, so it made sense that he would be here. She whistled to get the attention of the group of officers. I need 2 of you to come down to that open area, she pointed. I don't want you on the path, but a few feet behind it. Washington nodded to her and turned toward the tarp-covered body. 2 patrolmen detached themselves from the group and walked carefully along the vegetation just off the path. There, the girl said. Cory held up her hand and the officer stopped. She nodded to the girl. Which way were they coming? Was it in opposite directions, or did one come up behind the other? Opposite directions, the girl said. The guy who got shot from down there. She nodded to the north, the direction of the parking lot. And the kid from down there. She nodded southeast. At first, I thought they just stopped to talk. How close were they standing? Maybe 5 feet. Cory turned to the officers. You 2 move apart 5 feet. When they moved, it became obvious what an unnatural distance it was. Like that? Maybe a little farther. Another foot, she said. The girl nodded. Like that. Cory called down the hill. You guys face each other. What are your names? Sanchez, one of them called. McGuire, the other said. Sanchez, you're the perp. McGuire, you're the victim. From the distance between them, it was not likely they knew each other. Mark those spots. See if you see evidence of footprints. She turned to the girl. Then what happened? The guy who got shot put his hands out front of him like this. She pushed her hands out, palms up. Both hands? Yeah, both hands, like maybe he was throwing something on the ground, because the other guy bent down. It looked like he was picking something up. Robbery. Then it looked like he took off his watch and threw it on the ground, and the guy picked it up. That's when I knew something was wrong. It took a minute to register he was getting robbed. Did you see a gun? The girl shook her head. If the kid had a gun in his right hand, she would have seen it. Maybe he was a lefty. Maybe he hadn't shown the gun. What happened next? The kid took off running. Which direction? Back the way he came. She nodded to the left, and then, I couldn't believe it, the guy took off after him. He chased him? The girl nodded. I lost sight of them because of the trees. Then I heard a shot. I turned and ran. I was scared to death. I didn't call 911 till I got to the road. She looked at Cory. Do you think if I would have called right away, it would have made any difference? No. Cory squeezed the girl's shoulder. None at all. I think he died instantly. The girl shook her head. Nothing like this has ever happened to me. Thank God, Cory thought. The 911 call would give her the approximate time of the murder. And what happened then? They asked me where I was and told me to stay up by the road until the officer arrived. She saw Reba, the medical examiner, pick her way down the path, careful not to trip in her 3-inch high boots. She looked tiny beside the case slung over her shoulder. The last light caught her red hair. An officer pointed her toward the body. Let's go back to what you saw. Can you describe the assailant? Black kid, dark hoodie, I'm not sure if it was blue or black. Blue jeans. Height? I don't know. Taller or shorter than the victim? The girl looked towards the two officers, picturing what she had seen. Taller, skinnier too. How much taller? 2-3 inches maybe? Not a lot. Can you describe anything about the kid? Facial features, hair? The girl shook her head. The hood covered his head. If you didn't see his face, how do you know he was black? Cory didn't want to put out an APB for a black male unless she was sure. The girl thought for a minute. Just everything. He had those pants, you know, falling off his butt. His hands looked dark. Could he have been wearing gloves? The girl shrugged. I guess. She looked at Cory suspiciously. You sound like a lawyer, not a cop. I'm just trying to help. I know you are, and I'm just trying to keep from jumping to conclusions until I'm sure they're the right ones. Anything else you noticed about the kid? Anything at all? Limp, jewelry, shoes? The girl stared at the spot on the trail where the robbery took place and shook her head slowly. Cory flipped the notebook shut and nodded to the girl. You've been a big help. Make sure we have all your contact information, and one of the officers will drive you home. The girl hesitated. You don't think I'm in any danger, do you? Did the kid see you? I don't think so. We won't release your name, so even if he did see you, he would never be able to find you. She nodded. I hope you catch him. We'll catch him all right, Cory said, with more confidence than she felt. Random assaults were the hardest to solve, and they had next to nothing to go on. Thank you very much for checking in on my presentation.